Jesse Jackson has passed away at 84 years old, and if you only consume the tributes over the next few days, you'll hear about courage, conviction, and moral leadership, all of which are true. But you won't fully understand why he mattered, because Jesse Jackson wasn't just a civil rights figure who followed Martin Luther King Jr. into history. He was one of the people who had to figure out what came next after King was gone. Jackson was born in Greenville, South Carolina, studied sociology at North Carolina A&T, and became involved organizing while attending Chicago Theological Seminary. Now, he marched in Selma in 1965. He joined the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. He led Operation Breadbasket, which focused on pressuring companies to hire black workers and invest in black communities. That's important, because Jackson's rise wasn't built purely on speeches or symbolic leadership. It was tied to economic pressure, contracts, hiring commitments, measurable outcomes. He understood that moral arguments alone don't change institutions unless something material is attached to them. Now, he was in Memphis in 1968 when King was assassinated, and after that moment, there was a real question hanging in the air. Would the movement fracture, fade, or reorganize? Jackson chose to reorganize. In 1971, after internal conflicts within the SCLC and accusations that he had used the organization for personal gain, he resigned and founded People United to Save Humanity, PUSH, which later expanded politically and eventually merged into the Rainbow PUSH Coalition. Then came the presidential runs. In 1984, when he ran for the Democratic nomination, the idea of a black candidate mounting a serious national campaign was still treated as aspirational at best. He won more than 18% of the primary vote and carried multiple contests. In 1988, he won 11 primaries and caucuses and pushed even deeper into the party's base. That forced a recalibration inside the Democratic Party. It wasn't just that he was a candidate, it was that he proved there was a durable electoral coalition that could be mobilized nationally. Black voters, working class voters, progressive activists, and that coalition couldn't be treated as symbolic support anymore. That mattered. You don't have to draw a straight line from Jackson to later candidates to see that he changed the map inside Democratic primaries. After 1988, no serious campaign could ignore the constituencies he organized. Now, his record isn't spotless. In 1984, he used a slur referring to Jewish people and called New York Hymietown in a Washington Post interview. He initially denied it, later admitted to it, and apologized. It hurt him politically and remains part of his legacy. That episode isn't erased by everything else. It sits alongside of it. But if you zoom out, you also see someone who negotiated the release of detained Americans abroad, U.S. soldiers in Yugoslavia in 1999, Americans held in Cuba and Syria, civilians in Iraq, and someone who received the Presidential Medal of Freedom for those very efforts. He didn't retreat from politics as he aged. He criticized presidents across administrations. He endorsed Bernie Sanders in 2020. He condemned what he saw as threats to civil rights gains under President Trump. He publicly pressed leaders when he believed they weren't going far enough. He remained engaged. In later years, he revealed he had Parkinson's disease and had been living for more than a decade with progressive supranuclear palsy, a severe neurological disorder that affects walking and swallowing. He had been hospitalized in November, and his family says he passed away peacefully, surrounded by loved ones. Tributes are coming from across the political spectrum, from Al Sharpton to Barack Obama to Bill Clinton and Joe Biden to Donald Trump, which tells you something about his stature. Even those who disagreed with him understood that he was a consequential figure. Welcome to Why It's Trending Daily. I'm Hank. This is where I break down the stories everyone's suddenly Googling, and I explain to you why they matter. So here's what ultimately changed. Jackson pushed civil rights organizing into the realm of electoral leverage and economic pressure at a national scale. He treated voting blocs as organized power, not passive support. He built campaigns that forced the Democratic Party to adapt, whether it liked it or not. He didn't just speak about inclusion, he ran for office and tested whether inclusion could win delegates. And after he proved it could, the party structure had to adjust. So Jesse Jackson's real impact, it wasn't symbolic. It was structural inside party politics. He made it harder to ignore certain voters and easier to build campaigns around them. Over the next few days, as the memorial events are announced in Chicago and leaders deliver tributes, listen carefully to how they describe him. Some will focus on unity. Others will focus on moral voice. Fewer will talk about how disruptive he was inside his own party when he needed to be. That disruption is part of the record too. He didn't just stand in history, he forced it to respond. I'm Hank, here to explain the chaos, not hype it. If you want clarity instead of noise, you're in the right place.